right? I appreciate that. So I met him about 2 days ago, thanks to Kay, because she gave him some street cred. I don't know where Kay is at right now. But he asked me, would you speak to your experience as a black woman living in Hummelstown? I'm like, ooh, that's heavy. I've been here 12 years. I grew up in Middletown, but I lived in Hummelstown for 12 years. I have 3 girls that will be in all levels of the school system, elementary, middle, and high school. And what I thought about when he said, what is my experience as a black woman in Hummelstown, and just my experience with Central PA in general is that I am looked at, right? Dr. Amber Sessoms got a doctorate from Penn State, nationally certified school psychologist. I live in southern South Hanover Township. I built a house. So all these things, when people come to my house, you ring my doorbell, I get a look of surprise. Those little things show me that the world views me as rare and exceptional. And if you think about what that means for someone like me, and you get up here and you're like, oh, she has a doctorate, like, wow, a black woman with a doctorate. If you're sitting here thinking like that surprised you, you really have to start unpacking, why is that such a surprise to you? Why is I'm so rare and exceptional? Why is that a surprise? And what I'll say to you is, and I wasn't expecting to get all these claps right, because I'm not the hype person, but I appreciate that. But I really have to think about it, and I challenge people so often in that thinking, because if I'm rare and exceptional, what is the dichotomy of that? What's the opposite? So what you're saying about my racial group is that what? We're inferior. And if you're looking at a dichotomy of white versus black, where does that put white people? You're superior. There's a measuring stick that you don't even see as white people. It's so invisible, it's so pervasive, it's so insidious that we are all measured against. White people, black people, all people are measured against this measuring stick. And you talked about it, Justin. He's talking about the white church. That's the whiteness that we're talking about, that's been maintained here, and that we hold men and their masculinity against, we hold females and their femininity against, class. All these things are built around this narrative of what whiteness is, and whiteness being supreme, whiteness being the standard we all must uphold to. So when people come to my door and they're surprised by me, or they say to me, Amber, you made it. Keep living in your white neighborhood. You made it. Like, your black people are never going to amount to anything. And say it, not with a menacing look, not in with disdain, but they believe it, 100%. They believe that in their hearts. And that is the problem we have to start unpacking. If you believe that, if you look at me as this exception, if you look at me as this exceptionality, then you have to start asking yourself, what is the measuring stick? And how do we start dismantling this measuring stick? And who created the measuring stick, and why was it created? So my biggest thing, which I appreciate about Justin and Josh, is that they wanted to elevate and center black voices. And I'm emphasizing black in this moment, right? Because we have a serious problem in this country when we say anything black, we want to isolate race, and particularly black race, people get uncomfortable. Why is that? So for you in this space right now, you have to start unpacking, why is it difficult for you to say Black Lives Matter? Why is it difficult to isolate race? Why is it easier to say people of color? Why is it easier to celebrate Asian Heritage Month? Why is it when it comes to Black Heritage Month, you start getting, we don't need to do that. So these things you have to start unpacking. And centering our voices is what has not happened, and it's finally happening. And I'm not saying, I'm giving side eye, because why now, after 400 years, are you ready to hear our pain? Are you ready to recognize it? It's been there all along, and now you're new to it. I'm struggling with that. I'm gonna admit it to you. I'm struggling with that. But now you're ready to center our voices and decenter yourself, and that's not easy to give up that power. You're so used to being at the center of the conversation. You're so quick to be doing all these rebuffs and refuses and rebuttals to dismiss my experience because it makes you uncomfortable. So centering our voice is key, and I appreciate you for that. What I also want to say is that when you're doing this work, you have to name it. And people that know me know I'm all about naming it, right? Like, you have to call it out. Call it. My students are here, they know that. So calling it out is so key. And when I'm saying calling out, you're calling out anti-blackness. I had a conversation with some people, and they're like, oh, when we're looking at equality, it's more than race, Amber. That is true. We're looking at equity as more than that. But in this moment, we're identifying that there is a problem in our nation, in our world, that is very much about being against black people, being against people that have the color of skin that I have. There's a serious issue with anti-blackness, so you have to name it. And in order to name it, when you're recognizing it, you'll recognize it because you're starting to listen to us. Believe us when we speak, right? Believe us when we tell you our truth. It is the reality. It is not my opinion. This is the reality. You heard the secretary talk about all the stats. Those are real stats. And the stats are not the stats because we're inferior. The stats are because there's structures in place that have maintained the system of oppression and racism for centuries. So hearing us, understanding and centering us gets you closer to the solution. That's the first step. You're starting to denounce it. You're denouncing it when you're starting to do the work. So everyone's buying up all the anti-racism books, right? You can't even get one. You can't even buy an anti-racism book. So anyone, I'm so mad I didn't write one, because I could probably put my great and great grandkids through college at this point. So I appreciate that people are reading the work, but it has to be more than just that reading, right? I think it's important with education because I had to learn my own education myself. So here's part of the problem too. In schools, so I work in schools, we erase Black history, we erase African American history, and that is so intentional. And think about that. If we're erasing the history of Black excellence, if we're saying that Black people are descendants of slaves, and that's where we start the story, and then we'll throw in MLK, we'll throw in Rosa Parks, what is that doing to not only the Black students in that space, but what is it telling the white students how they're supposed to view us? So we're coming to school, and we're starting to tell our Black kids that they're nothing more than this, just by the complete erasure of us from our history. So if you can create this narrative that we're lazy, that we're inferior because you're not showing us our true history and you're not showing America our true history, then it's so much easier for you to dismiss it and be like, oh, that's their issue. Well, if they weren't beating thugs, if they weren't out looting, all these things, because you don't know the story of who we really are. We're not celebrated. So I say to you, is going to your school board, going to your superintendent and saying, we want to see this reflected. And I know I'm in Lower Dauphin, right? I always joke, I say, it's my daughter and Maya and Dale and my other daughter Maya that it's like 1.6% Black. They make up the whole demographic there. But it's so important not just for students of color and Black students in general to see themselves represented, but it also helps to disrupt this narrative that we are nothing more and that we are not equaling our humanity. So that is so important. Recognize that. And the last thing I'll say is that what I hope from this is not just some performative allyship that I'm seeing. Again, I side-eye with the best of them. I'm looking like, because I was doing research on Justin, like, what's he really about? I need to look at this, right? And I saw that he's legit. A couple people vouched for him. Now, I appreciate that. But we, in this performative allyship that I'm seeing, and part of that you have to really unpack, you have to really dig deep. Am I doing this to unpack my white guilt? Am I doing this to feel better about myself so that I don't feel like a racist? And understand this, being called a racist or being perceived as a racist is not the worst thing in the world. It is a descriptive term. It is not who you are. But because you do all these performative things and you push yourself away instead of doing the work, what is that doing to protect me? What is that doing to protect my daughters? What is it doing to protect my Black students who are in this space? Because you want to sit in your comfort instead of doing the work and challenging your friends, challenging your peers, challenging your family. So let's do the work. Because my fear is, right, you have a real fear that if I do this, if I step out, they're gonna say something about me. But my fear is different. My fear is if I don't say something, if I don't denounce it, what will happen? And you see what's happening. So now is the time. Flip that. Get out of your fear, get out of your comfort, get out of your bubble, and do what's right. Like, this is the beginning. You're here today, but I need you to really be about the work. And that means looking at our racist policies and procedures and our school system and policies that are in place that keep perpetuating this narrative that I am not enough, that I am the rare exception. That is not true. So it is up to all of us collectively to start dismissing that, disrupting that narrative. And I believe, and I have hope, because I'm telling you, I am tired. I've been tired. This is so much emotional labor for me. It is painful for me. I am sick of seeing our Black bodies being put on the screen like nothing. It is. I said to my friend, I said, how many times have you seen a white person be murdered on TV? And because of the era she grew up in, she says JFK and RFK. Okay, I'll give you that. But if you have to think about when is the time that happened in your life, how is it so common that you continue to see our bodies being murdered and victimized on TV? And what is that doing to us as a people? For our kids to continue to see those bodies, that is a reflection of us. That is a reminder that even though I have all these letters behind my name, right? I live in my fancy house and all these things, that I am still nothing more than what? So if you want to do better and want to stop being like, okay, I have this guilt, we got to move past that, right? We have to get out of the fear of saying something and standing up, and fear of losing our family members, and think about the fear of losing everything that humanity is about. Get away from the fear of doing and being silent and see what the fear is doing, because you're not doing it. You see it all around you. So I appreciate you. I love you guys. I'm hoping you hold each other accountable. In love, you got to check each other. If anyone knows me, I'll check you quick. In love, I'll check you quick and love. So if you need to be checked, you can contact me. But I'll let you know this too. I'm tired of checking people. So I need you guys to step up and check each other as well.